Chapter 101. This batch is not simple, breaking through foundation building, perfect foundation. Before his eyes lay a dense forest, intermittently resounding with the roaring of beasts. Han Yi, donned in a blue outfit, had his flying sword suspended in midair. He extended his spiritual sense to see if there were any disciples who had given up their trials midway. Albeit the purple bamboo forest was gone, the stage of battling exotic beasts in the forest was still ongoing. The attendees could choose to form a team or go solo. This test was designed to assess their inner character. "I give you up," a panicked voice echoed from the woods. At this moment, Han Yi knew it was time for him to step in, as saving these ordinary people was his responsibility after all. Whoosh! Just then, the sound of a flying sword cutting through the air could be heard, the blade shooting across like a comet parallel to the ground. Han Yi arrived, swift as lightning. A long red trail of sword ki swept across the sky, swallowing and stirring heavenly, earthly, spiritual ki as it fell. It seemed as if anything in its path could be slain. Hiss! The sword ki directly hit the scales of a menacing giant serpent, sending it flying. Many of its scales shattered and fell off. Han Yi quickly arrived and hovered in midair, his body surrounded by a red swirl of true ki. His sleeves fluttered while violent flames jumped around him, filling the space around a distance of 3 feet with unbearable heat from the ferocious fire gang ki. So strong! The attendees were completely taken aback by this sight. This profound sense of power was deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. Han Yi, with his sword sheathed, escorted the ones who had given up out of the forest, while the remaining candidates continued their trials. The following stage had some modifications. The candidates did not need to climb Mt. Wendao anymore, but there was a time limit imposed. Dragon Sparrow sect only admitted a specific number of people each year. The candidates had to reach the peak within the stipulated time. None of them were mediocre. Most of the participants were well prepared and adept at martial arts and could cope with exotic beasts. Even if a gifted individual did not qualify in this round, they would still be selected by the elders to become a disciple of the sect. Therefore, there were never too many unexpected disqualifications. Those who would generally disqualify are mostly people who are borderline passable and lack abilities. The Dragon Sparrow sect could take or leave such people. These people were decent enough for a small sect but insignificant in the Dragon Sparrow sect. They would be eliminated. In a dense part of the forest, the woman from the spiritual root testing stage, who possessed an ice spirit root, walked past in silence. Many barbarian beasts lay covered in a layer of frost in her wake. Although the woman wore the simplest blue dress, her elegant appearance was simply indescribable. She was tall, with peach blossom eyes glittering from time to time, and a small mole near the corner of her mouth adding to her sensuality. The entrance examination of Dragon Sparrow sect is but so much. She quickly reached the mid-slope of the mountain. Turning around, she saw many people rushing towards the peak. Some started to take action against others. Even within teams, there were cases of members turning against each other. No one cared about the rules that were just set, nor the so-called brotherhood they just pledged. The first one to reach the peak could become a disciple of Dragon Sparrow sect. Naturally, this would trigger a massive conflict. The woman leapt and stepped on a loose rock on the mountain wall. Using it as a launch point, she accelerated towards the peak with exceptional speed, as though passing through an uninhabited land. Being able to do this simply with physical power was truly no mean feat. Han Yi, who was flying mid-air, saw all of this and was secretly amazed. "She's quite impressive," he thought to himself, reminded of how Chu Shanyu was back then. He continued to fly towards the peak to see if there were any unfortunate ones who got eliminated midway. If so, he would have to save them. Of course, they would be treated as elimination cases. This year's batch isn't all that simple. During his flight, Han Yi saw several people who were as outstanding as the woman. They were like a crane standing among a flock of chickens. This entrance examination seemed like nothing to them. Compared to the last entrance examination, the number of candidates passing this year is far fewer. A day and a night passed, and the results were out. Those who were supposed to reach the peak did, and those who were supposed to be eliminated were. The final people who reached the peak would become disciples of the Dragon Sparrow sect. The elders of the main peaks had been waiting at the summit early on. Having finished a day of duty, Han Yi returned to the peak only to see Elder Guy's silhouette. He hadn't seen him since the Ghoul sect incident. "I greet my master." Han Yi greeted Elder Guy with a respectful bow. Elder Guy, upon seeing Han Yi surprisingly among the inner sect disciples maintaining order, smiled. The corners of his cracked lips strained to form an unattractive smile. "Over the years, you've grown a lot, quite different from 3 years ago. And you've stepped into the realm of key cultivation perfection. Well done with this. You have the hope of stepping into perfect foundation building. The subsequent golden core will naturally not be a problem." Hearing this, Han Yi nodded slightly to concur. Perfect foundation building, a unique case for cultivators who have stepped into key cultivation perfection. His senior sister Shen had told him perfect foundation building was significantly stronger than the ordinary foundation establishment cultivators. Perfect referred to a perfect foundation. The later they went, the larger the difference from other cultivators. Cultivators who can step into perfect foundation building practically have the golden core in the bag. "Master, it's time for your disciple to return to the Pure Yang Peak." Han Yi bid farewell to Elder Guy. "Go!" Elder Guy waved his hand dismissively, not bothering with him anymore. Han Yi could understand. After all, he was only an inner sect disciple. In the eyes of the elders, he wasn't important. Perhaps one can only matter in front of elders when they reach the golden core or become a direct disciple or a true disciple. Han Yi swept a glance at the newly recruited disciples, his heart no longer stirred by any waves.